Okay, got a message from someone on Instagram with a dilemma or a question that they're having. So this person writes, what's the deal? Increasing calories to lean out, working with a coach, but getting stuck because it seems counterintuitive to gain weight to lose inches. Let's get into it. I always want to start by saying I never want to take hearsay about another coach's advice because nutrition is so nuanced. A lot of things taken out of context don't always make sense, and I'd like to be afforded that same understanding from others. What I can do is explain the general concept of body weight and how calories play a role when the goal is to, quote unquote, lean out. When we talk about getting lean, we're usually referring to losing body fat while maintaining or even possibly building muscle. Now, the way that happens depends a lot on different factors, like how much muscle the person already has, what type of training are they doing, how much they are currently eating, not only calories, but also protein. The idea that eating more sometimes comes from the fact that under eating, especially if you have been in a long-term calorie deficit, can make it harder to recover from workouts, lead to muscle loss, and make it harder to gain any new lean muscle mass. And since muscle is what gives you that lean, sculpted look, we don't want to lose it. That being said, more calories only help if they are supporting your training, recovery, and muscle retention. In some cases, a person may have been eating too little to support lean muscle growth and development. This puts them more into a recomp style of eating, where the goal is to shed fat and gain muscle at the same time. Frankly, this is a super slow way of doing things, and it only really works in specific situations like for a beginner, people coming back after a really long training break, or for those that have been severely under eating. But for most people, and if I had a client coming to me saying that they wanted to lean out, I would, of course, first do an assessment, looking at where they're starting, their training, their history, current food intake. But I would more often than not start them on a very small calorie deficit with protein at the upper ranges to support muscle retention, combined with a structured hypertrophy training program to maintain and build muscle. This approach helps minimize muscle loss while promoting fat loss, which is ultimately what gives you that lean look. You have to be in a calorie deficit for some fat loss. What this does is moves away from this very slow recomp, which is super slow and only works for a few people, and instead splits nutrition into distinct phases, either muscle building or fat loss. This leads to faster, more noticeable results. And honestly, that makes everyone happier because they're actually seeing changes rather than feeling stuck in a slow in-between, trust the process type phase. Can you do recomp? Sure, but it is not the most effective or optimal way to go about changing your body composition. The reality is that getting into the shape and definition most people want requires multiple phases of fat loss and muscle building over months and even years. So instead of trying to do everything at once, the better strategy is to plan for intentional, structured phases that build on each other over time. This is why context is everything. When you hear advice like eat more to lean out, it really depends on the person, their history, and what phase they're currently in. The goal is always to set up a plan that works for you based on where you're starting and what's going to get you the best results in the most effective way possible.